Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Weekly Rundown. Let's get to the receivers. I'm going to start with the guy who I think, if he's not 100% owned this week, I'm going to be shocked. DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to cost you a ton. I mean, he's 17,300, but this is the Saints we're talking about. This is a team that has been getting absolutely roasted through the air. DeAndre Hopkins just lit up Darrell Revis. So Delvin Breaux, whoever they decide to throw at him, really just doesn't stand a chance. He's the most dominant wide receiver in football. I mean, it is the best position player, maybe the best flex player in football versus the absolute worst defense against the pass. So I think, don't overthink it. It's a no-brainer. Just get him in there and enjoy the fantasy points. And the guy I'm going to, spend down on to fit him in my lineup is Stevie Johnson. He's kind of got that Danny Amendola effect where it hasn't really adjusted for his role yet. Although, Amendola left the game last week, which is also a concern with Stevie Johnson. But the Chargers' possession receiver is just plain too cheap. And I think Rivers was too quiet last week. I mean, he had a good matchup and didn't really take full advantage. And yet Steve Johnson saw 8 targets and caught 7 of them for 54 yards, which at this price is basically value. And he actually saw 10 targets the week before. So he's seen a huge uptick in his targets. And Stevie Johnson, like I wrote about a few weeks ago, these slot receivers are pretty effective at converting targets. So when he sees a lot of targets, he's going to see a lot of catches. And they're kind of facing a middle of the road passing defense in Jacksonville. I think he has a nice game and puts up enough to provide value at 8,800. Who do you like?
I have two value plays for you. Where you maybe could spin up at some of the other positions. When I look at bang for your buck, I'm gonna start off with my man Ruben Randall going against the Washington Redskins. He's only going to cost you $7,400, and you think about what Randall did against the Redskins the last time they played. 27.6 fantasy points. So you think about the Washington Redskins and their secondary and what Cam Newton just did against them. I know Odell Beckham Jr. is going to get a ton of attention from the Redskins secondary, so that'll be great opportunities for Ruben Randall. Last time they played, 7 catches for 116. Again, I would look at him as a great play and a value play. And then Martavis Bryant for the Pittsburgh Steelers going out to Seattle, and you say, man, you're gonna pick Bryant against the Legion of Boom in Seattle, and I'm gonna say yes. Roethlisberger is gonna play. You think about the Legion of Boom is not what they used to be, and you figure if they're gonna match Richard Sherman up with any of the wide receivers for the Steelers, you figure they'll match him up with Antonio Brown. That'll lead Bryant to work against Kerry Williams, who is not playing great football. So you look at Martavis Bryant, and he'll be a great play. Going to cost you 10.5, not a ton when you talk about Julio Jones costing you 17, 17.7, and DeAndre Hopkins costing you 17.3. So those are two guys that I love, especially if you want to spin up at another position.
It's funny. You basically just stole my whole next segment. And it's also funny because I was discussing with my friends when I was looking at this slate that I think the Steelers' passing game is still in play. I just don't like Antonio Brown. And one of the first names I mentioned was Martavis Bryant. I was told I was crazy. So I'm glad you're on board there. And I think it's going to be a big day for a few of their pass catchers. And so feeding off kind of what you said, I'm going Heath Miller at tight end. That was another guy I liked who's too cheap. He's 6,000, which used to be the minimum, although I think fantasy drafts started going down to 5,000 at tight end. But still, I mean, 6,000 easy to fit in your budget. And surprisingly, the Seahawks, not only have they not been great against the pass overall, but they've been one of the worst against tight ends. I mean, we're looking at a defense 691 yards allowed and 7 touchdowns. The yards are fourth worst and the touchdowns are seventh worst. I mean, this is Seattle defense. People look at them and they think that they're dominant. They're just not this year. And Ben Roethlisberger pretty much punked us all last week. He was supposedly, or I think it was a few weeks ago at this point, he wasn't starting. He was their emergency quarterback. Jones goes down. He throws for 379 and 3 touchdowns. And when Roethlisberger's starting, he has a connection with Heath Miller that the other quarterbacks just don't. Miller's had an 8 catch and a 10 catch game earlier this season. it's a bad tight end defense. So I'm with you. I like Bryant, I like Miller, and I don't think you should be afraid, especially in tournaments, to attack a defense that people perceive to be really good that just isn't anymore. Who are you going with at tight end?
I'm gonna go with Delaney Walker for the Tennessee Titans. He gets to face, I think, the worst defense against the tight ends, and that's the Oakland Raiders. You think about Delaney Walker; he's already a top flight tight end. You think about last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 8 receptions for 109 yards, 21.9 points. A couple weeks ago, he had a 30.5 fantasy game. So, Delaney Walker against the when you think about the matchup with the Oakland Raiders, and then the productivity that he already has, and the fact that Tennessee doesn't have he's really their go-to wide receiver. They don't have a top flight number one receiver that Mariota would look to target. So his top target is Delaney Walker.
Yeah, it might shock you, but they've actually been passed as the number one tight end defense. It's now the New Orleans Saints who just give it
Oh,
up
really?
to absolutely everyone. But yeah, of course, the Oakland
What,
Raiders are
what, what
still
is
up
the
there.
Raiders? Where do the Raiders rank?
I think they're second in fantasy points
Okay.
allowed. So they've barely been passed. But yeah, I mean, every week for me, it's just who's playing the Saints because they're
Right.
just awful.
Yeah, they made the thing about the Saints. They made a change at the defensive coordinator position.
Right.
Dennis Allen's going to be the new defensive coordinator. Rob Ryan is out. Still the same players. I know they had a bye week, so you really don't know what they will be. I expect them to be better because it's pretty hard to get any worse.
Yeah.
But how much better? Same player. So a short period of time. Not sure how many more changes they can make in that short period of time, but I expect them to be a different type of defense with under Dennis Miller. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Dennis Allen.
So you may not want to stack Texans, but I'm sure you're still not afraid to play DeAndre
No, no,
Hopkins
no,
against
no.
them.
He's had great games against everybody, so
Right.
he's the play regardless.
Right. All right, let's get to the defense. Your bread and butter. I'm just going to say my small piece. I like the Jets at home against Miami. Miami only projected at 19 and a half points. Every team has trouble running the ball against them, so I think they kind of take Lamar Miller mostly out of the game. The one thing that Miami has that scares me a little is Jarvis Landry, who lines up in the set or in the slot, excuse me, and he's beaten the Jets a couple of times. But aside from him, I'm not really, Revis should take away the guys on the outside, and Landry's fine, Cameron's fine, but I don't think the Dolphins manage enough points against this dominant defense to really matter. I think the Jets sack Tannehill at least a few times, so I like the Jets defense. Who do you like?
I like Cincinnati, man. They get the Cleveland Browns. I'm sorry, they get the St. Louis Rams at home. So you think about the St. Louis Rams offense, they they are really struggling at the quarterback position. Barely, having. I think they average about 170 some yards passing on offense last week against the Baltimore Ravens. Only 131 yards passing, 82 yards rushing, 213 total. This is a great matchup for the Cincinnati Bengals. When you think about the Rams at the quarterback position, I don't even know if Case Keenum is even going to play. It doesn't matter whether Nick Foles starts or not. That's the play for me at the defensive position with the Cincinnati Bengals.
There you go. Let's now get to the questions. And London, I have to tell you, all week I haven't been able to live down the unpretty Ricky nickname you gave me last week, and pie face. I've gotten it all from all sides. So people thoroughly enjoyed you making fun of me this week. And wouldn't you guess that the questions came in against this week, and they're all about me. So
Oh wow!
yet again, people want you to either rip on me or answer these. Let's start with the first one. London, if we could do a karaoke duet together, what would it be?
Oh man, karaoke. I'm not a big karaoke guy, so obviously there had to be a duet. You and I. Maybe we'll do some type of rap song, man.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know, man. You got me stuck there. What's your favorite rap song? You got a favorite rap group?
My
Rap song?
favorite rap group, probably Bone Thugs for me.
Okay, yeah.
I've been
That's
that's
it.
back in
We
the
can do a
day.
Bone Thug song. Bone Thugs. Now the question is, which thug are you? Are you Wishbone, Busy Bone? No, you're Big Bone. That would be you, Big Bone. So we do the Thuggish Ruggish Bone. Some one of those songs, and with the special guest Big Bone.
There you go. Typically, you need two more, so each of us would have to play two bones, but
we
I think you'd
have
get it done.
we let Avery and not Wheeler, maybe Crummy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we're
not,
gonna have to
no.
bring in the behind the scenes guys from Fantasy Draft
Yeah.
to help us get that karaoke done. That question was from at Van Burf, by the way. Let's go on to our second question. Again, about me. I ask questions to you, and people want to ask about me. I don't know why that is, but they ask, how long would I last in an NFL training camp?
First of all, you probably wouldn't get invited to a training camp, but for some odd reason, if you were to get an invite, you wouldn't. You would last one day, and I don't even think you'd make it through the full practice. Um, it'd be individual condition. Warm up individuals. You probably make it halfway through the first practice, and
Yeah.
then you need an IV, and we probably have to get an ambulance and carry you off the field and all those things.
Well, it should be noted I have asthma. I've pretty much battled through it, but we would definitely need a trainer on the sideline with some oxygen and maybe even those little revival things in case I had to do some extensive running.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
I
let me
don't see
ask.
you get. I don't see you getting an invite. Basically.
No, there's no way. Let's go. I'm going to ask you the last questions because you kind of brought up something with Ruben Randall that I wanted to ask you. When teams have already seen each other and they're game planning, from what worked the first time, do they automatically scheme that into it the second time? Or do they think that, does maybe Washington defense think Ruben Randall's coming? Or let's say a running back ran for 200 yards. Do they think that's coming? Or do you pretty much try and use what worked again in the NFL?
You know, some teams they change regardless of how many times. Like say for instance with the Dallas Cowboys, obviously they were a division opponent when I played in Washington, and they ran their stuff week in and week out. There was not a lot of change from week to week. What they did, they just said we're going to run our stuff and out execute you. Also with the Giants under Kevin Gilbride, same thing, same system. You knew what plays were coming, and they just ran them. And they said my guy's going to be better than yours. With the depending on some teams, like you figure like Belichick, well, you can't, regardless of what he did the first time he played, he
Right.
may do something different with the Patriots. When they face a division opponent the second time, so it kind of depends on the philosophy of that head coach or that offensive coordinator, or even the defensive coordinator as well.
There you go. So it depends on the person. So you can't really, we like to just have rules in daily fantasy to make it easy, but it's never that easy.
No.
Until,
Now, what I will say is, they may figure out different ways to get the ball to a certain guy that they like, and it
right,
may be different designs of plays. Hey, we're going in this game, we're going to get the ball to Odell Beckham, so Odell Beckham Jr. So, all right, how can we create the matchups that we want in our favor? Move him around, do different things with him. So they'll be, the guys that they want to get the ball to, they'll figure out a way to get it to them. It may just be in a different manner.
right. I think that's the Falcons' philosophy this year is every week, we're facing a great corner. Where do we move Julio Jones where we can get him the ball,
Right.
basically? Right. Uh, until next time, this has been the weekly rundown. I'm Ricky Sanders with London Fletcher, and we are out.